Hey family, it's Getty Diesel here from Not Finished Yet, back with another video, the first video of the new year, 2025. I'm excited to share this one with you guys because God showed me this about the woman with the issue of blood. So, turning to in our Bibles, Mark chapter 5, let's just briefly look at the story of the woman with the issue of blood in her account with Jesus Christ himself. Starting at verse 25. And there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years and who had suffered much under many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard the reports about Jesus, and came up behind him in the crowd, and touched his garment. For she said, If I touch even his garments, I will be made well. Now that's where this amazing miracle happens. But what great faith that she had. If I touch even his garments, I will be made well. Verse 28. And immediately the flow of blood dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. And Jesus, perceiving in himself that power had gone out from him, immediately turned about in the crowd and said, Who touched my garments? And his disciples said to him, You see the crowd pressing around you, and yet you say, Who touched me? And he looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling, and fell down before him, and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace, and be healed of your disease. What a touching account we see there in Mark chapter 5 of the woman with the issue of blood and her ultimate healing, the miraculous healing that Jesus had done in great compassion. Well, it was even the power um, bent up within his garments that had come out. He felt uh, he had felt some sort of virtue coming out from him. And so he knew that someone had touched him in that way. But even just the clothes of Christ had this great healing power. And it wasn't just the clothes themselves, it was because of who Jesus was that it also had affected the clothing that he wore. That's just beautiful to me there. But anyways, I'm reading now in my personal time each day. I'm reading through the book of Leviticus. I'm currently on the book of Leviticus because I've decided to read the Bible for the first time ever in my walk with God, cover to cover. And I've gone through Genesis, I've gone through Exodus, and now I'm on Leviticus. And I noticed something interesting here in Leviticus chapter 15. So if you want to go with me and turn to Leviticus chapter 13, it's talking about the laws of bodily discharges. And we see some different bodily discharges and so forth with that description. But there's a particular verse here in Leviticus chapter 15, and that is starting at verse 25. If a woman has a discharge of blood for many days, not at the time of her menstrual impurity, or if she has a discharge beyond the time of her impurity, all the days of the discharge she shall continue in her uncleanness. As in the days of her impurity, she shall be unclean. Now, this is different from what it says here in verses 19 and on. It says, When a woman has a discharge, and the discharge in her body is blood, she shall be in her menstrual impurity for 7 days, and whoever touches her shall be unclean until the evening. So that's for her menstrual impurity for 7 days. Um, but what this is saying in verse 25 forward, it says, if a woman has a discharge of blood for many days, not at the time of her menstrual impurity, or if she has a discharge beyond the time of her impurity, all the days of her discharge shall continue in uncleanness. And that's where it hit me suddenly, like, oh my gosh, there's a connection. And you may see the connection already to the account of the woman with the issue of blood. I said, oh my gosh, wow. It just slapped me, smacked me around, and I realized, like, oh gosh, this is why she was an outcast. This is why she was seen still unclean. This is why people ran from her and wouldn't dare touch her. This is why um, she was having all these issues and was not even able to socialize or hold a regular life. It's because here in the Levitical law, it says, if a woman has a discharge of blood for many days, not at the time of her menstrual impurity, or if she has a discharge beyond the time of her impurity, all the days of the discharge she shall continue in uncleanness. And this woman found here in Mark chapter 5 with the issue of blood, and also in some of the other gospels, we see the story of how she was seen as unclean. She could not lead a normal life. She had suffered much under many physicians and had spent all that she had and was no better. So she wasn't getting better. She was continuing to discharge blood for who knows how long. I think it might have been like 12 years. Is some amount of time that this woman was suffering for so long. I could be wrong about the 12 years, but it was definitely years of time where she was suffering with this bodily discharge of blood, and she was seen as unclean. And when you think about it, it makes sense because this took place in the area of Galilee, which is found in the country of Israel. So she was surrounded by Jews who were still holding to the law found in Leviticus. So even though Jesus came to fulfill the law, and us Christians are no longer under the law of Moses or the laws of Leviticus and so forth, there's Jews even today that are still trying to uphold these laws, and they see them as sacred, and they try to follow all these different laws, and even laws of Moses, and laws that are written in the Old Testament. So for her to be around all these Jews who saw this law as still active, they would have treated her as unclean. Okay, so now she's around Jews. They're treating her unclean. But this is the reason. That was the connection that I saw. This is what God showed me. This is that which God showed me. Why I'm making this video. The revelation and connection I saw and experienced was that the reason why this woman with the issue of blood was still seen as unclean is because of the law written in Leviticus 15, which says when a woman has a discharge of blood for many days, not at the time of her menstrual impurity, or if she has a discharge beyond the time of her impurity, all the days of the discharge she shall continue in uncleanness. And now I decided to go a little deeper into this, and I said, well, why is first of all, why is this discharge of blood even seen as unclean in the first place? Because we know that there's different blood is symbolic in the way of the Bible for many different reasons. It It has a symbolic meaning of life, for instance. It has a symbolic meaning of atonement. Blood has a symbolic meaning of sacrifice, written in the Bible. But then you also see some negative connotations where blood, or rather the shedding of blood, is associated with murder. And then the reason why the discharge of blood, or the menstrual blood, is seen as impure or unclean is because of its association with death. Okay, so that's why this menstrual blood, or the discharge of blood that this woman um, with the issue of blood had, it would have been seen as unclean because of its connection with death. Okay, so that's why um, she would have been seen as unclean, and she was treated in such an outcast sort of way and manner. Uh, no one would have wanted to touch her, um, and we see why. If we go back to Leviticus chapter 15, we see why no one would have wanted to get close to her, or touch her or help her in any sort of way, because it says and why she would have not been able to lead a regular life, sleeping on a bed, being around loved ones, going different places. She would have probably been treated as a homeless person on the streets, sleeping on the ground, or some other place. She would have had to stay away from everyone, basically. No real social contact. And because if you look here, continuing in Leviticus 15, after chapter 25, it says in 26, every bed on which she lies all the days of her discharge shall be to her as the bed of her impurity, and everything on which she sits shall be unclean. So it wasn't like she was going around to different places sitting on seats, or so forth, because everything that she would have sat on would have been considered unclean, um, as in the uncleanness of her menstrual impurity. And whoever touches these things shall be unclean. So that's why no one was wanting to touch her or touch the things that she touched, and so forth. Um, and whoever touches these things shall be unclean, and shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. So you wouldn't see someone who would want to have to go through all of that just from touching this woman there. So this is why she was experiencing the things that she was, and was being treated in the way that she was. But if she is cleansed of her discharge, she shall count for herself 7 days, and after that she shall be clean. And we see here that the medical doctors, the physicians, the people that you're seeing to try to get help, they weren't able to heal her. They weren't able to help her. So she wasn't receiving help from the physicians, the doctors. But look at this. This is why the greatness of the miracle of Jesus. She, but if she is cleansed of her discharge, she shall count for herself 7 days, and after that she shall be clean. But Jesus cleansed her immediately, and she was able to be restored immediately, and she didn't have to go through this drawn out process. So that's a great miracle that we look. Sorry guys for the light. I apologize for the great light in my face. So that's why we rejoice, and we see what Jesus had done for her here in Mark chapter 5. But what a great um, rejoicing that must have come from that, for her to just delight in her healing, and how grateful she must have been for being healed by Jesus when she stepped out in faith, and touched the hem of his garments. So uh, that's what I learned and saw, something new with this story of the woman, the issue of blood, from Mark chapter 5 to Leviticus chapter 15, there was something um, for me to uh, take away, you know, uh, for me to gather from that. And it inspires me. It inspires me because I want to encourage us all by saying, let us step out in faith. Let us be like this woman with the issue of blood and step out in faith. Call out to Jesus, grab out to Jesus, pray to our Lord. Maybe it's a step of faith in the way of action. We take a risk. We make a bold decision. We do something new, and we see Jesus show up, and we see Jesus working, and we see Jesus do something wonderful for us, that us too will also rejoice. I know you must have seen some sort of miracle in your life. I know I have. This is what I've gathered from the story of the woman of the issue of blood. And this is what Jesus showed me. Why she was considered unclean for so long. Well, with that being said, I thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my new video and visit with me again. That's a heart for you. I plan on making new videos in the near future. New videos for 2025. Maybe this is showing me that they will be full of light, like my face is right now. But anyways, guys, I got some new video ideas, and should be soon coming out where I release some more videos for all you precious, beautiful people of God and others. Thank you for the support. I always feel blessed making videos like this. So I hope you got something from this, and I hope you learned something new as well. And as always, God bless you. May the peace, love, and light of Jesus Christ fill you and be over you. Amen.